This program is a presentation of UCTV for educational and non-commercial use only.
Thanks for joining us, Technology Management Program. We're delighted to have you with us. This is the final lecture in the fall quarter, and thanks for your participation and interest. We've had some great people. I just running through Kalestis Juma, Deborah Christofferson, John Davies, Kevin Sriracha, a variety of folks and ideas, and I hope it's affected the way you look at technology in the world. We have another great speaker this evening, and we'll have mics on either side for Q&A for the television audience. Thanks for joining us, and we'll have Cassie do the introduction.
Hello, and welcome to tonight's lecture. It's a pleasure to introduce Mark Sylvester. He's influenced software development for the past 20 years. As a co-founder of Wavefront Technologies, Mark helped co-design the world's first 3D modeling animation system, and for it they received an Oscar for technical achievement. In addition, Mark Sylvester has founded IntroNetworks, which is innovating social networking. You can find Mark driving around Carpinteria, cooking, and practicing martial arts in his spare time. His successes are as eclectic as his hobbies. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If any of you are tweeting during this, we've got a hashtag for the event, so I've got other people following what we're doing here, so feel free to do that or take notes. However, we do a lot of event networks, and it's a big thing in events now to people are tracking things on Twitter. So if you're doing that, great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's been 10 years that I've been involved with this program, and speaking to people who are thinking about how to be entrepreneurial and how to live in an entrepreneurial culture, and how to, whether you're starting up a company or involved with a group of people that are doing a startup, what are all the kind of things to think about. Tonight, what I'm going to talk about is specifically things related to social networking. Who in here does not have a Facebook page? Okay, perfect. So that's kind of what we're talking about, is this phenomenon. We've been doing this now for 7 years. We create custom private social networks, knowledge networks. How many of you have heard of TED.com? Okay, so we create the network for TED.com 7 years ago for Macromedia as a social experiment to see, could we create a network online of all the people that go to TED, because TED's full of amazing people, and could we get them to tell us a tremendous amount of information about themselves that they had never told people before, or they hadn't really thought about telling people before. We did this as a way to demonstrate Macromedia's capabilities with Flash. You've all heard of Flash. Well, back in the day, 7 years ago, to be able to get Flash to talk to a live database and to be able to throw video around was pretty much impossible. But in the fall of 2002, they made some technology acquisitions, and they were able to, the first time, talk to a live database and transmit live video all within a website. Now, today we think, yeah, really? This is, because this is the video that drives YouTube and all kinds of other sites, but then it was very, very novel. It hadn't been done, and Macromedia wanted to show the TED audience, world leaders, of how you could actually have a completely different kind of experience on the internet, what they called a rich internet application. Now we think of it as Web 2.0 and Ajax and all of that, and we don't even question it. But that's how we started 7 years ago. Well, now, 7 years later, times have really changed. The economy has changed how businesses are acting, how associations are connecting with their members, how people are working with their employees and their clients and their partners and their vendors, and trying to create a more effective way to communicate with them, to connect to them, to help them collaborate, because that's how businesses grow when you have those three things in place. So what's happened is businesses now are trying to figure out, how do we do things differently? We don't have the money, we've had to cut our budgets, we have fewer people, and times are completely different. So it's kind of a rich environment in which to innovate. Now, if we take all of that and say, and I pulled this graph this morning, we look at the rise in Facebook, the blue line, and CNN, the green line. You know, it's obvious that there's a tremendous surge in social media. In fact, by 2012, which is just around the corner, 1 in every 6 people will be on the internet. They'll be, and probably they're not going to be on laptops. They're probably going to be on a mobile device. And how businesses embrace that is going to be really important, especially in how they connect to their various audiences. Well, the next challenge is there are so many people, so many vendors in this space. If you Google social media logos, you will get this picture. And this is only 1/4 of the entire picture. There are hundreds and hundreds of companies. And by social media, I mean blogs and wikis and microblogging and social networks and social news and social bookmarking and all of that technology. That's what I'm talking about. Well, the challenge for businesses right now is what's called the paradox of choice. There's too many things to pick from. You can Google the paradox of choice and read lots of studies that have been done. But the idea is, it's kind of like going into a cheesecake factory. You're hungry, they give you a 36-page menu, and you just want a hamburger. And you know, you've got to go through all of this stuff, and there's so many things to pick from. What happens, the challenge is, you don't do anything. You go with the status quo. And if you stay with the status quo, you're not growing, and you're not able to take advantage of all these new technologies. That's the first challenge. Well, most people, now I'm gonna have a little stereotype here. If we look in general business today, the people that are running the businesses are the boomers and the aging boomers, and they're retiring. They're controlling the shots. They're digital immigrants. And if we look at the workforce that's coming in, you folks, you're digital natives. You've grown, I mean, technology is just part of your DNA. And so you already understand this, but most businesses that I talk to don't understand this simple thing, that there's a couple different kinds of social media. The first is these open networks. These are free networks. It's Twitter, it's Ning, it's MySpace, LinkedIn, where you can go and create a community. You can, you know, we started off with saying how many people aren't on Facebook. This is where we live. This is how we communicate with one another. This is how we stay in touch with people. This is how we learn things, as we get information. For businesses, though, this is a real challenge because they don't own any of the data. It's not secure. It's not private. And that's a problem for a lot of businesses, which begat closed networks, closed systems, mostly internal focused, very professional. They're secure, they're private, and what's very, very important is that they own the data. Now, why is that important? We live in the information age, and having direct access to all of the rich information that we get from the interactions that happen in social media, whatever that is, are critically important to guiding how we drive our businesses and our organizations. Well, the third challenge is around information security. So now if you're thinking about you're a corporation and you've got all of your employees tweeting about what they're doing, that might be a problem. Right? It might be a problem if they're blogging about a recent discovery in the lab. Start thinking, just kind of thinking about that. Now, I'm all for transparency and open communication, but we also want to be smart about that. So if your whole strategy is around using Facebook and LinkedIn and things like this, you're going to have a problem, especially, and again, if you're following this field, you'll see there's a tremendous number of challenges here. Just this week, I don't know, probably 50 of the people I follow on Twitter had their Twitter accounts hacked, and there were, links to malware sites in there. So you start thinking about all these kinds of problems. That sets up the opportunity for these closed networks that are behind firewalls that don't have those kinds of problems. So we're thinking about information security. Now, if we think about all of the people that are in these networks and all the brains that are contributing to whatever network it is that you're in, one of the challenges is being able to extract all that information and use it to improve our business in one way or the other. Being able to take the experience, the interests, the passions, your challenges, your strengths, and be able to use those and funnel that towards the common good of whatever the organization is. However, it's shown that most companies don't know how to use that information. They don't know what to do with it. We had a music company in New York City who had seen our software, fell in love with it, and I showed him all the information gathering at the end of it. And he said, Mark, I love this, but the challenge is I don't think there's anybody here smart enough who knows what to do with that information. So one of the challenges here is what do we do with all of this information that we have? There's so much of it there. So, how do we filter it? How do we take use of it? And then how do we plan for that to improve our products, improve our services, improve the relationships that we have with our various audiences? Well, another challenge is we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to maximize those resources. Tony Robbins says that he'll ask a big crowd, what are your problems? And we don't have enough people, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough new customers, we don't have this and that. And he says, it sounds like you don't have enough resources. Oh, yeah, we don't have enough resources. And he says, you don't have enough resourcefulness. And so thinking about how to be resourceful in these days becomes really quite important, right? That's a critical success factor. Now, another challenge that organizations have, and it's interesting to talk about this in a school, is that businesses are too busy to focus on training. Training has become an investment in the workforce. So they're thinking, do you know this interesting fact? This year alone, the customers that I talked to, by and large, the cuts were between 25% and 50% of the training budgets. That's a serious amount of money. And that's cutting off the investment in the future. That's a terrible thing, because what happens is the workplace is constantly changing. We need to be thinking about education, constant learning, lifelong learning, teaching our employees, teaching our customers, teaching the market at large. And if we're not doing that, then if we're not growing, we're dying. So thinking about, okay, well, if that's true, then how does social media play into our whole education outreach? How are we using these tools to help teach our audiences better? How are we connecting them to the knowledge and information in all of the other people that are around us? Which leads to our next challenge. I love the picture of this guy, because here's the guy who says, we want a social what? We want to do what with this? Because the real problem is that right now, in 2009, we have a real cultural problem. Again, the digital immigrants are calling the shots, and the digital natives are the ones doing all the work, and said, well, what do you mean I can't just reach out and find people just like that? I could do that on Facebook. I can get 100 people down on State Street with a couple of tweets. What do you mean I can't rally people inside the business? So if we start thinking about talking to the leadership about the power of this transformational technology, we're starting to think culturally. So for instance, when we go into large organizations, we talk about organizational development, we talk about change management, we talk about things that are related to culture that have nothing to do with technology at all. How are we going to get the workforce to communicate different? How are we going to get them to use these tools and use these new technologies and really weave them into the fabric of the organization in a way that really is going to improve the effectiveness of the organization? Other challenges, where's the ROI in this? ROI, return on investment. Okay, we're going to pay a certain amount of money, we're going to hire people, we're going to do this work. What do we get from that? Well, we're kind of at the beginning of this whole new trend of using these kinds of tools inside the enterprise. We don't really have all those metrics yet. We don't really know yet. 10 years ago, 1999, corporate boards, were deciding, if you can believe this, at a board level, should we have a website as a company? Seriously, should we have a website? The marketing person was saying, we need to have a website. The board was saying, well, what are we going to do with that? Didn't know really what the internet was. And the bid to build a 5-page website was around $100,000. Oh my gosh, really? You know, you go to GoDaddy and do it for what, $9.95 now. So, but again, that was only 10 years ago. And at that point, we didn't know what's the ROI on that. And we didn't know what being on the web meant and having a website, for most people, it was just take our brochures and put them up on the internet. And a year later, we went and looked and said, maybe that's working, not working. Now we call it Web 2.0. We've really learned how to maximize the internet. It's completely changed everything that we do, I think, the way we buy things, the way we get information. But it was only 10 years ago that board of directors were making decisions, should you have a website? We are at an inflection point in time today where boards, again, because we have to present to boards all the time, are deciding, should we have a community? Should we have a conversation with our customers? Seriously. Well, you think that's an obvious. Yeah, of course you should have that. But we don't want Facebook for our customers. So it's interesting times right now, but we're in interesting inflection. So what are the things, if you're a corporate executive and you're going to be, you're thinking about going to work, you're learning how to talk like corporate executives and be in that whole startup culture, what are the things you want to think about to be successful in social media? Now, I'm not talking about, again, not open networks. This isn't Facebook. I'm talking about professional networking inside the corporation. Well, the first thing is having a strategy. It's very interesting for me to have conversations with people and ask them, because I'll say, well, what are you doing in social media today? And they say, we've got a corporate blog, we have a wiki, we're using Yammer, and that's great. How's that working for you? It's working pretty good. Do you have a social media strategy? Well, no, not really. Really? You're doing it, so they're being tactical without having a strategy in front of that. So what are your objectives? What are the business problems? Again, Charlene Lee in her book Groundswell says, this is not a technology problem right now. It's a business problem. The business problem says we need to have a strategy. What's our objective? What are we trying to do? What are our goals? And then how are we going to get there? So the first thing you want to think about is what's your strategy. The second thing then is once we've got that strategy, figure out what's our roadmap. What's the implementation? How are we going to get that done? What are we going to do? Who's going to do it? One of the things that I love about today with Web 2.0 and Enterprise 2.0 and open source and free tools and all of the choices we have is that we can do things really quickly. Back in the day, 3 years ago, if we were going to implement a big enterprise software solution, it could take you a year just to think about what you were going to do. And a year, 18 months, 2 years for the consultants to come in and build that thing out. So it's now 3 years later, you've not been able to get the advantages of that technology. So having a really quick, clever, have something up just in a few days, just to try it out, see how it works, is really, it's kind of that part of that rapid prototyping environment that Tim O'Reilly says is the way for new businesses to be more agile. So thinking about how quick you can get things done is very important. The third really key piece, and this might be the most important, is what do you expect to learn about your audience? What would you want to know about your employees? What would you want to know about your fellow students here? What would you want to know about your partners? What would you want to know about the people who are interested in buying your products? What would they want to know about each other? Again, we live in the information age. Plan, what would you like to know? So we'll work with a client and say, what do you want to know about your audience you don't know today? What do you think they want to know about each other? We take those two lists and we put them together. And at the middle is where the network lives, because that's where we're going to do all the matching to figure out how do we learn more about them so that we can better serve the audience, because we have real-time intelligence about what's important to them. The fourth thing then is, what's the experience like of actually being engaged with the technology? How many of us have, you Google something, you get your results, you click on the first link, if that looks like it's got the answer, you go to the page, you give it what, 4 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds? You either see it, it's there, or you move on. You hit the back page, you keep going, you keep going. You get today, with an application on the internet, you get one shot to catch people's imagination, to get them intrigued in what you have to do. So when we're talking about having a social media experience, we want it to be compelling, we want it to be different, we want it to be interesting, we want to have something there that's going to get people to come back. That's so important. The other part of experience that's interesting is that for a community to be successful, you have to create a sense of belonging in everybody that's in the community. It's very important. The reason you want a sense of belonging is so people will come back to the community. So how do you create a sense of belonging? Well, the idea is that if we all feel like we're achieving something together, we're producing something together, we're interested in the same thing, then we have a sense of belonging. And if it's a pleasant environment where we belong, where we hang out, where we do what we do, we like to come back. It's pretty simple. We're humans. So how does that translate into the online world? I don't know exactly the answer, but I know if it's engaging, it's compelling, it's fun, it's visually interesting, you'll go back to it. The fifth and final thing is around measuring. That which gets measured gets done. And if we know what our goals are, what our objectives are, we're trying to get more new customers. We're trying to cut down our attrition rate with our employees. We're trying to have our partners feel more empowered. We're trying to have our dealers have more information quicker so they can close more deals. Whatever those things are, let's measure them so we know how the efforts, for instance, if we're trying to drive traffic to an event, and we're using Twitter, and we're using LinkedIn events, and we're using all of these free tools that are out there, let's track using Google Analytics to figure out how much traffic that really drove. Let's not just guess, let's really track it. So this is being very, very diligent. Then we think of these 5 things as critical success factors to an online social media strategy. And the reason this is in a circle is that you should always be evolving this and testing it and challenging the assumptions you made in your strategy. Because, it might not work out, because every audience is different. Every audience reacts a little bit differently, and you want to be very sensitive. That's why you measure it, and if things didn't work out exactly the way you thought, try something else. Keep going. Don't give up. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. That's probably the most fun to it. So, what's the value in all of this? Because now one of the things for us is we've got to communicate the value in this strategy, because most people, I'll tell you right now, there was a presentation on Tuesday I was following on Twitter with all of these executives, and 75% of them, when asked this question, said there was no value, none at all. So that's what we're as vendors kind of up against, is there's no value in it. So I would suggest that there is value, and that there's several ways to measure that and several ways to look at it. There's one of the top marketing guys in the country, a guy named Jay Abraham, suggests that there's only 3 levers that you can move to improve your business. You can get more customers, That's an obvious one. You can get more money from them. That's also an obvious one. And you can get them to buy more often. Again, very obvious. It's kind of business 101. But these have a multiplier effect. So if you're really thinking about your business, well, how could I get 5% more customers? I could, whatever that number is. How could I get them to buy a little bit more without raising my prices? Or how could I get them to buy more often from me? So now I think about how does social media help us in that regard. So if I can get our message, our client's message out to more people, probably get more customers. If we could get them an example on the frequency of purchases. So we have a client who's able to use the social network to find out what their audience is most interested in from a challenges point of view. What are the challenges they have on a day-to-day basis? They take that information and they use that to guide a webinar strategy. So every month they have a webinar for these people, about 60,000 people, and they charge $29. So this was a brand new, they didn't even have this before, and they were able to get them to buy more because they charge them a subscription to be a member of the association, and then they get them to sign up for these webinars, and they know exactly who's interested in these specific topics because of the social network. So there's an example, there's hundreds of these examples if you really go and start to look at them. Now, there was a report Josh did in May of the various things that people are using social media for, and these are all measurable. I think the biggest one is lead generation. So we know about SEO, search engine optimization, and search engine marketing. So being able to use these various social technologies to drive people to a website is a very good thing because we can measure that. We can have our prospects come in and we can have conversations with our prospects. In fact, if you have clients and prospects in the same network, you can get them starting to talk to one another, talking about a client's what they like about products, get them talking about your brands. External marketing sites are focused on this all of the time. But when you look at the other things that you can think about, reputation management, branding, all of these various areas where you're kind of controlling or you're listening to what's being said about your company, your brand, your organization, very, very important and all measurable and contribute to the bottom line of the business. Now, inside companies, there's also several things that people are starting to use these networks for. Now, this is where our company really lives, is these internal networks. It's kind of been the thing that we're very well known for. Helping, we build innovation networks inside companies or big knowledge networks for training and education. So these are, again, some examples you wouldn't necessarily think social media would be good for, but in fact it's fabulous for, because especially think about, I'll show you an example of an organization that has, there's 65,000 people worldwide, but in any given location there's maybe 2 or 3 or 4. They don't have offices, they work out of their homes. So they're extremely disconnected from one another, and they feel kind of like the Lone Ranger. So being able to just do simple things like have them feel connected and get information is a tremendous, tremendous boost just for that company. So internally, the kinds of things you can think about is finding skills. How many times when you're looking for something, you just send an email, hey, does anybody know how to do this? Or you get on Facebook and post that. Imagine inside a company being able to do that or share knowledge. Or succession planning is a term you're probably not familiar with, and that is in a company that is very large and they're kind of growing their people and people are there for a long time. As people retire, they're grooming people to come in and succeed those other people. So starting to think about how do we use this intelligence about our employees to actually guide that whole process and really facilitate, rather than anecdotally knowing who might be good at something, more algorithmically knowing where the skill sets lie inside the organization. And then finally, human capital management, just so you're buzzword compliant. That is, when we're thinking about all of the people in our organization and all the things we need to do to have those people be more effective. So this really comes down to three things for us. Who do you connect to? Because once you're connected to someone, then you can start to communicate with them. Once we're communicating, we can start to collaborate. So if we think about the audiences that we, in an organization, in a business, first the employees, that's the first group around, think of them as brand ambassadors. Then you've got your partners, your vendors, your affiliates, the people that help you get your job done. Then that first external ring, customers, maybe members of an association, maybe attendees of a large trade show. And then external to that, leads and prospects and people that are interested in what you have to say. So if you think about this as a series of conversations, they're starting outward and they're getting closer and closer and closer to the brand. So we're trying to get people talking about your products, talking about your company, talking about working there, and then actually working all the way down to see how aligned they are with the brand itself. Very interesting survey last year, the Cone report said that of the people that are involved in social media right now, a high percentage of them expect that companies have a social media presence. We go to a website now, I'm looking for an RSS feed on the website so I can just get information so I don't have to go there. If I see somebody interesting, I want to follow them on Twitter, I want to read their blog, I just expect that's going to be there. And that's becoming more and more of the case. But it's not just that that information is there, it's that there's a conversation. I can have a conversation with that company, with that person, because we're all trying to be more connected and feel like we have relationships. There's a great book by David Noor called Relationship Economics, and he's suggesting that we went to being extremely disconnected from everyone, and now we're feeling more and more and more connected. And how do we learn how to invest in those relationships and think of our relationships as an economy so that we can actually get more done in less time, actually? So where do you begin? This is the big question when I'm talking with the corporate executives. Hey, Mark, I'm with you. I got it. We believe this. What do we do? Well, the first thing is figure out what are you doing now. And simple things like, do you have email for all your customers? That's a simple one. That's not always a yes answer, by the way. Then create a roadmap and help people figure out, because this is so new to people. Again, back to the 1999 with a website. Well, what do? We don't know how to do this. We don't know what it is. Help us figure this out. So this has spawned a cottage industry of social media experts. I love it. People are paying people to build Facebook fan pages for their company. Yep, you too can make a lot of money doing this. Go to socialmediajobs.net and you'll see what I mean. There are tremendous amount of opportunities, and there's just because there is no right way right now. So anybody who comes in there and sounds like they know what they're talking about is probably going to get work. But come up with a roadmap to help people figure out how they're going to do it. Now with us, we actually have a platform, so we've developed the software to actually do this, to actually build one of these networks and figure out what are all the right things to do to make sure that we connect all those employees or connect you to the partners in the right way. Then finally, this next piece, and I talked with a blogger today who writes a shepherd blog on how you shepherd communities. There's a new job category called community manager. Now again, let's go back to 1999. People didn't know they needed a webmaster. And now, how many webmasters are on campus here? Probably a dozen or more per department, right? So I mean, webmaster, we get that. Community manager, brand new job, brand new industry. Could be very, very big. I'm not sure yet, but I know these guys are making a tremendous amount of money right now. So what's important about that is as you get these conversations going and you have these networks going, keeping them going and keeping them fresh and keeping the conversation alive is going to be the responsibility of people in the organization to take care of that. Now with IntroNetworks, This is the commercial part of the show. We have a patent. By the way, for those of you who are going out and starting businesses or being involved with people that are starting businesses, one of the great things about this country is we can patent things, we can patent our ideas and protect them. It took us 6 years to get our patent. We did that TED conference, and we said, we've done something here that no one else has done. No one's ever done it this way. And we should file for a patent. Now, it's taken us that long. Now, what was interesting was we got rejected probably 15 times, where they wrote and said, oh, no, 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 what you're doing is like what this other company has done. We went, no, this is how we do it. And they go, oh, okay. And then they try it again, and back and forth and back and forth. He spent a lot of money doing that. And then finally, he said, the patent lawyer said, this is your final rejection. This is it, we're done. And I said, can you go there and present to these people in person? And they said, well, yeah, if you want. I said, well, okay. He said, but you have to prove what you do. And what we have developed is a matching technology that takes someone's profile and someone else's profile, in fact, all the profiles of all the people here, and matches them up to find your best match based on any kind of criteria. That's what we did, and we do it visually. You could see a picture of it here on the screen. I'm the center pin, and pins are arranged around me based on areas of interest, challenges, objectives, expertise, and the pins are closer to me based on how much we have in common. We're visual creatures. We have this unique ability as humans to recognize patterns instantly. It's one of the great things about us. We are great pattern recognition systems. So here you could see patterns. You don't know what they mean yet, but you can see them. And so that's what we had our patent on. So I went and I showed this to them, and they said, well, we've never seen anything like this before. And I went, yeah, exactly. That's why we want a patent on it. So we did get a patent, and that, I tell you, that gives you a huge competitive advantage in your business. And it's also a great thing when you're out raising money, when you have patented technology and you have intellectual property in your portfolio. That makes your company much more valuable. And it gives you, if those of you who are taking any kind of marketing, you talk about a unique selling proposition, it gives you something unique to sell. So our hook, if you will, is being visual. We believe that it's so much easier to understand how information can drive a picture so we can make a decision, so we can make a decision much quicker. So everything we do is based on being very, very graphic. The other thing is that people will not read help. That we have a help button, and it's the least pushed button in our system. So you have to, as you're designing things now, think about the fact, how many of you have manuals for electronics that are still sealed in the plastic wrap that it came in? Of course, we don't read any of that stuff. We want to archaeologically discover software. We want to figure it out on our own. So that's knowing that, we design the system to kind of play into that. And then finally, the third word for us is smart. Thinking about using the technology to help you figure things out quickly, make connections for you, make recommendations for you of who you should be paying attention to, who you might hire, who you might want to promote, products that you might want to buy, again, using this matching technology. Now, the IntroNetwork doesn't live in an island by itself. It lives in a world of a lot of existing information. So the idea then is to use a web service strategy to be able to connect to all of this existing information. So there's tons of information up there, as you could see. So we can fit into an enterprise, into an organization, and be able to be this layer of visualization that sits around it so that people can actually get more out of the information they already have. That's the idea. We're trying, remember, this is a business problem, not a technology problem. We're trying to help people make better connections within their business, with their customers, clients, etc. We've been able to solve problems for a small Santa Barbara company Founded in Carpinteria, now we're in Montecito. We're only 6 people, and we have a client list like that. You do not have to be a large company to be successful on the internet. You have to have a great idea. You've got to have passion. You've got to work really hard at it. But you can do it with a small group of people. We're doing it. And we just got back from New York, where we just signed up a bunch of new clients. We're very excited about just kind of constantly growing our business, even in this tough economic time, because we're really focused on what are the business problems and how does social media come in and solve those problems. Specifically, I talked about TED earlier, a very interesting problem to go into the world's kind of the sharpest thinkers, the best designers and entertainers coming together and create something for them that's interesting and intriguing. We created the TED Network in 6 weeks. This was 7 years ago. And our metric for success was if 30% of the people would sign up to this network, we were in there. 78% signed up. We got written up in the New York Times and Forbes magazine the week after the conference, and that started our whole company. So a phone call can change your life. Getting that phone call, would you guys be interested in doing something interesting for TED? They didn't know what they wanted. We said, gee, wouldn't it be great if we could really tap into all of the interest and the intellect of all the people that come to TED? And little did we know that 7 years ago, we wouldn't sleep much since then because we were kind of at the vanguard of this whole thing called social networking. Harvard uses us in their executive education, so they've got a class like about this size of CEOs who pay like $30,000 for a 3-year program, and they come in there and they use our network to actually get to meet one another because they're in such a time-compressed situation and they want to build relationships with all of the other CEOs that they use our network to be able to do that extremely quickly. The national science teachers, really interesting challenge. We have science teachers throughout the United States. We have 1 or 2 in an elementary school, maybe 3 or 4 in a high school, more in colleges, and they don't have time to talk to one another. And we're trying to raise the level of science education, raise the profile in the United States. They saw this as a perfect way to do it. And finally, Xerox uses us as a global knowledge network to be able to help people put together teams to go after new markets. So I'm going to show you the software now and tell you just this one story. We did a big project for Brown University called the Brown Institute in Advanced Research, or I think that's exactly what, BRE. And they said what was different about this was that we really focus hard on what's the purpose of this network? What are we trying to connect? And from that, we're able to come up with an implementation that helps people really make a difference. So let's look at the software. So this is, all the software is written in Flex for those of you that are engineering school. So Flex is from Adobe. We are, in fact, an Adobe-funded company. We were able to do that as a result of moving over to this platform. And so, here, let me log in. So the idea for us was to create something that could live behind a corporate firewall so that we could have security and privacy, as we talked about earlier. But this system runs in the cloud. How many were familiar with cloud computing? Software as a service, so this all runs in the cloud. So this is what the application looks like. There's a dashboard that has kind of dips into the activity stream of what's going on in the community. So here we can see our metaphor, again, is pin view. So there I am at the center, and people are arranged around me based on what we have in common. And here I can see all of the tags that represent the community. So I can see creativity is a big word. So if I click on that word, that's actually going to show me all of the people who have the word creativity in their profile. And in fact, there's a pin right here, a guy named Mark, who I don't know, who's very close to me, I click on his profile, and you'll see at once this looks different than profiles we're used to. Because this tells me, Mark says he's a designer, an educator, a mentor. He's seeking new ideas and adventures. He values courage and authenticity. And what's relevant to him is community and design, amongst a bunch of other things. But we learned about 40 things about him in one click. We can get information on where to contact him and look what groups he's in, and then see how he answered a bunch of questions. In fact, to learn more about him. And Mark says we could talk to him. He says, venture, happy, and respect. Now, I'm not really sure what that means, but that might be an interesting conversation starter. So I might send him a message. In fact, I told you earlier about hooking up live video. So let me hook this up. So we're taking it, there we go. So I could send him a message. Hey, Mark, what do you mean happy, venture, and I forget what the third word was, but it's kind of interesting. What does that mean? I'd love to talk to you. Your pin is right next to me, so we ought to talk, okay? Bye. Now, I'm not going to spam him and send that message, but do you know that 70% of communication is nonverbal, right? So if all we're doing is emailing people, we're losing a tremendous capability of communication. That's why we love the video in here, is because it really gives us a way to communicate who we are, our passion, our feeling, all of that very, very quickly. So we didn't send him that message, but we could have. So now if we just start to roll over all of these pins, we start to find all these really interesting people, and we start to see what we have in common. So how do we build that profile? Because this gets to that engaging, compelling part that I was talking about earlier. And that comes from going in and giving people a series of words to pick from. So we have like, I am. So if I say, I am still deciding, I take that word and I move it up here. And where I put the word, notice there's a little index here. That index indicates to the matching engine how strong of a match to make. So now we're all familiar with building our profile on Facebook. And it says, my interests. And there's just this big box. And you type in something, comma, type in something, comma, type in something, comma. And you run out of gas after 3 commas. I mean, most people, right? And then there's some people there's just too much information. But we found that if we made it really easy for people to go in and select from this list and say, well, what are your values? What's important to you? What's relevant to you? They would actually pick and move these things around. And consequently, what happened was we got people to tell us more information about themselves quicker than they'd ever done before. And as a result of that, we're able to then quickly go in and find groups of people that could help us build a team. So for instance, I might say, show me all the people that are bloggers, and we'll find those bloggers who value creativity, and of those people, how many of them also are interested in anything 2.0? Okay, now we can get an old school view of those people, just a nice list. Sometimes that's helpful to us. We could also get a map of those people, because now we can start to say, gee, I'm looking for someone who could help me. I'm looking for a blogger. I've got a question on WordPress, and I'm looking to see, is there someone in my time zone? So I might come down here and zoom in and see if I could find someone very quickly. So this gets into the whole area of geocoding and geocaching and starting to, again, it's another visualization because we get it. Right? We see that map and we instantly get it. Now I could go in and say, show me all the people in California. But I could just look at California and I see all the people in California. So it's just a different way of thinking about it. Now we also said, well, of all of those people, we said anything 2.0 and creativity and blogger, but what are all the other words that define that group of, 179 people? And why is that important? Because what did I say earlier? The third strategic thing, because I know you were taking notes. Plan for actionable business intelligence. So if we know that this group of people is interested in, we say, here, I love this one, authenticity, how would that cause us to act differently? And I'll answer that question because this site that I have here is, if you go to intronetworks.com, and if you want to experience this yourself, we use this community as our way to have a conversation with our clients and with our prospects. So they'll go to intronetworks.com, and it's loading slow, and I want to go kind of quick. They go in and they build a profile of themselves. They say, I am, I seek, I value, and what's relevant. So based on that, we know how to talk to our customers because we want to have a conversation with those customers. So if we look at the words that our prospects select, look at this. Look at these are they're entrepreneurs, they're change agents, they're thinkers, they're leaders, they're marketers. Do you think that this affects how we write, how I blog, what I pay attention to? You bet, right? When we look at what their values are, they value creativity, authenticity, honesty, intelligence. I'll tell you, based on this information, this colors how we present ourselves to our audiences. Authenticity. So the majority of people coming in that are interested in IntroNetworks, this is live data, say outside of creativity, they value authenticity. So that would be really important for the CEO and our management team to know that that's what's important to people. That's how we talk to them. That's how we treat them. Honesty. They value intelligence and courage. This is most companies, the lion's share of companies, don't know this kind of information about their prospects, their employees. This is revolutionary. Asking these kinds of questions changes how you have a relationship with those audiences because you act differently now. You treat them differently now in a very, very, very powerful way. I'm going to show you one other. Well, let's look at the Xerox Network because I think this one's very interesting as well because this is a different outlook because this is not about learning about their customers. This is a knowledge network for all of the employees. So if we're searching here, so let's say a marketing guy is wanting to put together, they're going after the energy business. So let's see who has experience in the energy sector. And of those people who, because it's a new program, we want someone who has writing skills and presentation skills and problem solving skills. Now notice how these words are completely different than the other one because it was customized, because Xerox had a completely different problem than we did, which was a completely different problem than this group, which is SP Richards, the largest supplier of office products in the country, supply to Office Max and Staples and things like that. You've never heard of these people. They've got thousands of dealers and clients, and they didn't have a conversation with them, no connections to them. And all of these small businesses are having a real hard time right now. And they said, gee, could we think differently? Could we be more innovative? Could we be more resourceful in the way that we're talking to clients? And that's when they said, gee, let's look around for a social media solution. It's fascinating. All of these different examples. Here's a good one. For any of you who have friends in the military, family in the military, or friends, or you know people that are in the military, this is a great network that you can go to. This was one of the few that we have that's open. It's called MyVetcom. And the idea here is, can they connect for educational reasons? Could they connect for business reasons? Could they connect for healthcare issues? And could they connect for support for family members? So there was a huge push last Wednesday was Veterans Day, and Procter & Gamble got behind this particular site to get out there and drive people to this network. And I love this view because there's so many of these veterans and their families. And this is a site where we've actually partnered with these folks to help them make these connections because we think it's such an important thing. But I love this. I love being able to go in, and they love being able to find people that are interested in the same things they're interested in and can help one another because they make a connection. They know what they have in common, And look at how much information we know in one click. How many dinner parties or lunches or conversations do you have to have with someone to get this level of information about them, and we don't even know them? This is actually changing things. So it's kind of taking all of the things we know about social networking and putting it on steroids. With that, I think I'm going to finish the formal part and take some questions. Thanks.
Hi, thank you very much. When you're tweeting or Facebooking from your company profile, what level of detail do you go into? Do you speak about operations that are going on in the company? Do you say events that are going on? Which information do you choose to reveal about yourself? And also, do the customers really have any incentive or desire to read that information?
Great question. I know that I follow all my competitors, and all my competitors are following me, so I'm not going to give them competitive intelligence, but I'm excited. We just got back at midnight last night from a 3-day trip in New York and met a bunch of customers and new prospects. So I didn't say who they were, but I was really excited about the type of conversations we were having, so I tweeted about that a lot. We tend to, we're very, very public and very transparent, but I know my competitors are listening, so I'm not going to give them ammunition to use against me. But I think it's really important to think about educating our customers and the people that are following us about things that we're paying attention to and ideas. So if I have, like for instance, if I'm having a great conversation with a client and I have an insight, that kind of insight I think is going to be good for other customers to get that weren't in the room. Now, my partner sometimes thinks I'm a little too free with that information, but I think it's important to just kind of have that, not be afraid to share information. And I think by doing that, setting an example for our clients to look at that and feel comfortable with sharing information.
Do the customers actually care about those details? We went to a trade show, we did this. Is that something that they're actually even wanting to read?
I think they do, and the reason that is when we have relationships with people, we want to know the full measure of the people, not just the business part. So kind of knowing who they are as people makes a huge difference. So, you know, when you get out there and get in business, you're going to have business lunches and business dinners, and you're going to have real conversations with people, not just talk business all the time. So if you think about Twitter and blogs as being an extended conversation, you really get to understand what's important to people. So people will know, I've got a couple of grandkids up in San Francisco, we had a great Halloween. They ask me about that. Hey, how was that? Or I like that picture. And they feel like they know you a little bit better and you know them a little bit better. People do business with people they know, with their friends. And so you're always trying to build friendships with the people you do business with. So I think this is a great tool for furthering that type of thinking.
Thank you for joining us, Technology
Thanks, everybody.
Management Program.